Today I'm going to show you how to make more money as an album cover designer by using social media rollouts.
Dreadlabs.
What's going on everyone, my name is Tom from Dreadlabs and I'm a graphic designer. I have been a professional graphic designer for a few years now, and in my time I make a lot of album covers. And one thing that I found out quickly was that you can make more money as an album cover designer if you also offer more services than just one. What I mean by this is that you usually just design an album cover and hand it over to the client. But what you could also offer them is giving them a social media rollout. What I mean by this is basically turning your album cover into social media assets so that they can use it for banners on various social media platforms, as well as promotional animations for YouTube, TikTok and other social media platforms. In today's video I've prepared a custom album cover for myself, which I'm going to use to show you how to make these social media rollouts very easy and quickly. So without any further ado, let's get into the video. Alright, as you can see on the screen right now, this is the album cover that I've prepared up front. If you want to see how I make this, or if you want to have the PSD file for this, or any of the files that I will be making during this video, you can actually become a patron of mine. There is a link down in the description. It would also really help me out to keep up the weekly videos for you guys. I'll give a little bit more information around the end of the video, but just know that for now, if you just want to get all the files for this video, there's a link down in the description. So as you can see in my layer menu right here, I basically group all of my artwork parts in different sections. And this is obviously like a different case every time you make a new album cover, but for now, what I did up front before I started designing is I made sure that I have separate elements in this album cover. And what I mean by this is I have the background here, I have the tribal shapes in the middle. I actually do have them separately, so I can also move the top one and the bottom one separately. I needed to group that for a second, but as you can see, this one is a separate one than the top one. And then I also have the text layover, as well as the textures. It might be a little bit hard to see because it's a fairly subtle noise grain texture, but just trust me that there's a texture on this, as well as the sticker layer. So the very first thing that we're going to do is make a new Photoshop file with all of the formats of the banners. So let's just do that right now. So I'm going to make a new file with all of the sizes of the banners that we're going to use for social media rollout. The first one I'm going to do is Facebook, and you should always look these up because this video might get outdated by the time you watch this and the sizes might be updated, so look them up yourself. But for now, what I can find on Google is 820 pixels wide and 312 pixels high. But actually, because of like phone resolution and stuff like that, it's going to be 360. So I'm just going to do 820 by 360. I'm going to make sure that I turn on artboards because I'm going to make more artboards, of course. So the next one we're going to do is Twitter, which is 1500 by 500. SoundCloud is going to be 24,080 by 520, and YouTube is going to be 2560 by 1440. So a very important thing, especially for YouTube, is that this banner is really large, and that's because it has different aspect ratios on YouTube when you're playing it on a TV, on a phone, or on your desktop or whatever. So what I usually do is I paste in this guide. You can find these on Google. Essentially, this tells you where everything is safe to post, and it's basically within this like rectangle right here. So what I usually do is I just make a guide for myself in this artboard like this. The same goes for SoundCloud. So let me just see if I can find that as well. Sometimes these templates aren't scaling up properly, but you can easily just scale them up. Like you can see right here, this circle essentially is where the profile picture will be. All right, so now we can just delete these two templates. So the first thing I'm going to do in this cover artwork is export all of these groups separately. So I'm going to export the background, and the way I'm going to do this is basically holding Control or Command on my keyboard and selecting every group that I want to export separately. And this can also be different layers. So as you can see, I'm exporting the background, the bottom tribal, the top tribal, the text layover as a whole, two separate textures, as well as the sticker. And also make sure that you're exporting these in true size as PNG. And the reason we want PNG is of course so we have a transparent background. Also, if you don't know what size you should make your album covers, what I usually do is I start out with a 3000 by 3000 pixel canvas, and whether or not it's going to be printed 300 dpi or 72 dpi if you were just working digitally. So now let's get back to our template file. So back in our banner file, what we're going to do is go to the folder where we exported our album art assets, which is over here. And the first thing we're going to do is drop in the background for all of them. So I'm just going to scale this up so that it's covering all of the canvases from the center on out. And of course, this can also be in a different position if you are feeling like it, if it matches your artwork a little bit more, like that. Right, so the next thing is we're going to drop in our two tribals. And I'm going to scale these down just a little bit so we make sure that they will cover everything of the banner. So we'll call this tribals, and we can just hold Alt Option on our keyboard and align this to the middle of all of our banners. And the way you do this is, like I said, completely up to you. If you feel like you want to scale this up a little bit more so that it's like covering over here, that's also completely possible. I think it's pretty cool to just show the complete tribal as a whole. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is grab the sticker. And looking at it now, the text layover, we might just want to do 2 separate groups for this, as it might work a little bit better. So let's just do that right now. As you can see, it's a little bit complicated here because there's a couple of separate layers going on. You will see that when you have the project file for this. But of course, what we can do is just open this in Photoshop, grab this, duplicate this layer and duplicate that layer, and we'll call this text track title, text artist title, and we'll just export these separately. And now we can drop these in as well. Making sure that these are the same height. I'll align these towards the banner as well. And if you have experience with these banners, you might know that these will be cut off on Facebook or on Twitter. Of course, you can always keep that into account. This is just because I have these corner text lined up. I might just do these differently if you have more time for this stuff. For now, just know that you can always customize these yourself, of course, like that. And the last thing we need to do is drop in our textures. And what I usually like to do is when I use these textures, I basically put in the name which blend mode they should be in, because that would really help. Speeds up the process instead of just going back and forth into Photoshop and looking what blend mode you used on textures. We'll make sure that all of these stickers are over the textures, because that's the way I designed it. And now that I look at it, I forgot the texture on Facebook, or it got deleted somewhere. Anyways, there we go. All right, so this is basically how I generally make my banners when I do album cover artwork, and you of course can charge your client to do this as well. This way they don't have to do it themselves, and you have more services and you can make more money this way. So let's just save these up, and of course you can always export them, and I would always advise you to look into what social media platform you're using these for and using their preferred export settings. From my general knowledge, they usually convert everything to JPEG because it's like a smaller file size. So if you don't want that platform to compress your banners, I would say compress them yourself or export them as a JPEG up front. So yeah, that's how we do the banners. Now let's get into the animation. All right, so we are here in After Effects, and what I'm going to do first is make a new composition with the same size as the original artwork. And in this case, I'm just going to do a 1-minute composition of 3000 by 3000 pixels, and we're going to import all of the files that we exported for this video and drop these into the composition. Make sure that everything is layered right. So let's just also turn on the blend modes for the textures, put them to multiply screen, put the sticker on top of that, and of course position these in the way that you would like to. What I'm actually going to do is leave the sticker out of this and also leave the text and text out of this, because we're going to name this composition background. Now that I think about it, we're also going to delete the textures. The first thing we're going to do is just make a basic animation here, and I have an idea for this, and of course you can do this any way you want, but what I want to do is grab both of these tribals. Under the course of 1 minute, I want to animate the top one maybe 6 times towards the right and the other one 6 times to the left, so that you get 2 different motions here. And what I want to do as well is I'm going to import my track. And this is just one random song. I'm not going to let you hear it because it's not finished yet, but what I'm going to do is, let's see, I'm going to drop this in. You can also of course do this in whatever you want, but I have a preview for a track here. What I'm going to do is go to Keyframe Assistant, convert audio to keyframes, and we have the audio amplitude now. When we press U on our keyboard, we get all of the, how do you call them, keyframes. Essentially what this is this grabs the volume of your audio and turns that into keyframes, as you can see right here. If you want to learn more about this, I do have a video about the subject where you can learn this yourself, so I'll put a link down in the description to that. For now, what we're gonna do is just apply what we learned from that video. Just gonna type ease value, grab the max value, which is about 20, the minimal value is 0, sorry, and then we'll put in 10 0. And what we're gonna do is grab the size or the scale of the background, hold Alt or Option on our keyboard, click on the pick whip tool and link that to the slider, and type in plus 100. So essentially what this means is we've mapped all of the keyframes that you can see here to a value between 10 and 0. So all of the, if there's a maximum like 20, it will be mapped to 10, and we add 100 to that. So essentially we get the scale of 100, and everything the sound will make will be put on top of that 100. As you can see at this frame, the scale of this background is now 109.5. So that means that this thing is 9.5 plus the 100 here. Again, if this is really complicated to you, don't be worried, because I have a video on this subject, link down in the description. So what we have have so far, I will mute this sound so far if I haven't done that already, but it's maybe a little bit hard to see because it's really lagging. I'll just lower the quality for a second. And now you can see that the background's actually moving on the background music. So we have this background composition now. Let's make a new composition called full cover artwork. We'll drop in the background. We'll also drop in track artist title, and let's just align this for a second. All right, and we'll also drop in the sticker. Also, by the way, if you want to have the exact position of where your sticker was supposed to be, you can just go to your sticker group here and go to properties, and this is the X and the Y position of the sticker. So 2137 by 75, 2137 by 35. 75, I think. Was it 75? It was. But actually that doesn't work because I think the anchor point is mismatched. So what I'm just going to do is wing it. This does work a lot better with Illustrator because you can just position the anchor point. And Photoshop seems to have removed that feature because it used to be on the top here. But anyways, and then the last thing we're going to do is grab the two blend modes. And I'm also going to show you a way to animate these blend modes a little bit. What I'm going to do is scale these up to 110%. And we'll go to Effects, Wiggle, Position. And I'm just going to have this wiggle 25 times and just 3 pixels, maybe 10 pixels per second. And I'm just going to zoom in to see if we can actually see the animation. So you can kind of see it here. The texture is moving a little bit. Like I said, it's maybe a little bit hard to see on video, but it will add an extra layer of depth, especially when you're using more obvious textures than mine. Anyways, so now I have this full cover artwork. What we can do now is basically make a couple of assets. So usually I do 3: portrait or TikTok/story mode, square, as well as landscape or YouTube. So let's start out with the most obvious one, which is the square one. What we can do here is, what I usually do is I create a folder in my After Effects file called export, and comp1 is actually called export square, and we'll just drop in, actually I'm going to organize this for a second. Let's just call this footage and drop in all of the PNGs and everything that we used so far, and we're going to drop in the full cover artwork. It's obviously way too large, so what we're going to do is right click, transform, get to comp width, and this will scale it down so that it's 1080 by 1080 pixels. Well, let's make a new one. What I'm going to do here is have the width by 1080. What I usually do with this one is let's export YouTube, and we'll drop in the background and the full cover artwork, and for the background we'll scale this down so that the width will fit to the comp width, as well as the cover artwork, and we'll scale this down to maybe somewhere in the middle. So we have basically the background as well as the cover artwork, which also gets a nice trippy effect. Of course, when you do this, you need to mute one of these so the audio won't crack or double up. Next one is basically the same thing but for TikTok and stuff like that. So we'll call this export story, and we'll do 1080 by 1920, and this time we'll have the background and we'll transform that to fit the comp height, and we'll scale this down as well. And of course you can do this in however you want. If you want the background, you can also duplicate the background and call this background clean. And what we can do is just delete the tribal shapes here. So we have the clean background and replace the background here by holding Alt or Option. Now we just have the background with one of these tribals. It's also completely possible, of course. Basically, your only limit is your own imagination. And of course, if you start trying to keep this in mind, this exporting and animating before you start working on your cover artwork, there will be a lot more possibilities, because you won't nip yourself in the butt by making the cover too complicated or not organizing it enough. So the main takeaway is here, before you start designing, make sure that you will be having a organized cover artwork, if that makes sense. Alright guys, there you have it. Like I said before, if you want to get the PSD files for this cover artwork, the banners, as well as the After Effects file, you can become a patron. Thanks to my patrons, I'm actually able to give you guys free tutorials on a weekly basis, and that's because this way I can do Dreadlabs full time. As a thank you, however, you get access to all of the project files from all of my tutorials, including these ones, a 15% discount in my asset web store, as well as an exclusive Discord role in the Dreadlabs community server. If you go 1 tier up, you'll also get access to exclusive tutorials such as how to start your journey in Illustrator, how to make death metal logos from scratch, as well as a lot of other videos. So a huge shout out to my patrons. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments below. And by the way guys, if you don't have the budget to support me on Patreon, leaving a like, comment and subscribe already does a lot. So with all of that being said, this is Tom from Dreadlabs tuning out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.